Good morning, Greater Boston Association of Realtors. This is Jason Gelly, your 2020 GBAR president, with this week's edition of GBAR Live, COVID-19 industry news and issues update. Really excited to have Dr. Lawrence Yun and Dr. Jessica Louts from NAR here today presenting and talking about some economic updates. Dr. Yun has a commitment right at 3 o'clock, so we're going to jump right into him, but a real brief introduction to Nancy Mombourquette from Citizens Bank. We'll give a chance to speak in just a few minutes. So without further ado, Dr. Yun, we'll have you start. And just a reminder to everyone, the ground rules for asking questions is to use the question box, not the chat feature, but the question box. And I will read those questions to Dr. Yun and Dr. Louts as we have an opportunity. Thank you, Dr. Yun.
Great. Thank you for inviting President Jason. I've been to Boston multiple times, one of my favorite cities to visit, very dynamic, vibrant. Feel pity that I cannot be there in person, but we have to do what we can in this new environment. It's quite a tough environment, as you know, that job losses that has been occurring, and we may have one more month of more job losses before turning around. The turnaround is uncertain in terms of strength, whether it will be V-shaped recovery, meaning that we went down hard, but also we will recover in a fast way, or whether it will be more U-shaped, we go down, stay down for a while before a recovery. But I want to give my best assessment from what we know and also what we don't know. So let me try to pull up my PowerPoint slide onto the screen. So if the technical person can help me in terms of what to press to get the slide up. Okay, slide is already up. Very great. So let me then move over to the slide and remove my screen down so I can see the slide. Okay, so the GDP is the measure of the total economy. And this is something that you constantly hear when you turn into the financial news, as well as many people in politics, including President Trump, who have been touting, quite a long, expansive economic growth for quite some time. In fact, this time last year in Washington, D.C., President Trump did address the realtor audience about the economic performance. We know that President is sometimes can exaggerate many figures, but on the economic numbers, he was quite right in terms of stock market being at all-time high at that point. The economic expansion, the longest economic expansion ever, unemployment rate at the lowest across all demographic groups. And furthermore, in February of 2021, so before the pandemic, I recall Goldman Sachs coming out to say in 2021, it is absolutely recession-proof, continuing economic expansion. Then, of course, we hit the pandemic, and consequently, the economy is shut down, huge unemployment situation, and without a doubt, 2020 will be negative. How of a negative will it be? When we look at the first quarter number, there are some interesting data points. The first one is that economy contracted, no surprise, 4.8%. That would be considered quite steep decline from any historical measurement. But the second quarter, the data will not be out until about late summer, but it will be absolutely awful, something like minus 30%, because we essentially shut down April, May, some opening hopefully in June, but this 2 months of shutdown will lead to quite a large contraction. But going back to the first quarter, what we are finding is that economy contracted because consumers and businesses held back spending, it declined. But note the next line, residential investment, which increased 21% from 1 year ago. So this is showing how strong the housing sector had been, both home building, home sales, spending for remodeling, quite strong. Commercial real estate was already a little iffy, especially on the retail sector. The industrial warehousing was very strong before the pandemic, now has become even stronger as people are shopping online. But the demise of the shopping mall is occurring because of the pandemic. So quite a difficult situation for commercial real estate. The federal government, state government spending was just modestly positive in line with the inflationary growth. But the next two line is somewhat interesting. Even though people spent less money, income actually grew in the first quarter. And if people have more income, but they were spending less, what were they doing? They were saving a lot of money. So a typical family, say, were saving $200 each month, now suddenly boosted their saving to $500, or that's a little more than doubling in their savings. So what could be the cause? One possibility is a pessimistic outlook about the economy. They believe that the economy will not be performing well. So people simply want to tuck away more cash under the mattress for rainy day funds. So that is a pessimistic outlook that the economy may not revive when the governors reopens the economy. The second perspective is that people are saving money because there was no place to spend. The baseball game is canceled. The restaurants are not available. So people just save money because there was no place to spend the money. So once the economy reopens, there will be plenty of cash ready to be unleashed into the economy. And if that is the case, we may get a V-shaped recovery as people can use the income that is saved into the economy. But we have to wait and see how everything plays out. Now, the job market, as I mentioned, is quite ugly. And it is no surprise that the 20 million job losses in April, these are off the chart loss in jobs. It was principally concentrated in leisure and hospitality. So the hotel industry completely shut down. Boston is one of the favorite locations for conferences, but without conferences, hotels are laying off workers, the restaurant workers. In Florida, the Disney World is completely shut down. So large job losses in the hospitality leisure sector. The second line is somewhat interesting, that there is actual job losses for people working as nurses and doctors. And you said that's kind of funny because all the television images were of doctors and nurses working heroically fighting COVID-19. So why was there a job losses in health? Because dental offices are shut down. The surgery for hip replacement or knee replacement, those were shut down because all the hospital resources were dedicated for potential COVID worst case scenario. But as the economy reopens, I'm sure there will be demand for dental services. I'm sure people may actually be suffering some toothaches that they are wanting to get it fixed. The knee replacement, hip surgery, all that will be in demand as usual that would occur in any given year. So 2.5 million job losses in education and health, I think it will quickly turn all positive as the economy reopens. Other sectors, there will be some jobs recovery in construction. Hopefully we have more home building activity because especially in Boston, you encounter that severe housing shortage, both apartment shortage as well as for single family housing. So we need more construction to satisfy the rising population in the Boston region. This is the total job picture in the Boston market. So if you go to the middle of the chart, 2009, that was the Great Recession. So from Great Recession to pre-pandemic, one is looking at about 400,000 job creation in the greater Boston metro. Just consider 400,000 job creation. So these are quite sizable job creation that occurred over a decade, 40,000 each year average. And therefore the housing demand was steadily rising. And then in March, we saw some jobs reduction and probably more in the month of May before hopefully turning around in June. So the job market was quite strong before the pandemic. I've been monitoring a very fast moving data on unemployment insurance claim cases in Massachusetts. And what this chart shows that prior to the pandemic, there are only around 5,000 people per week who were applying for unemployment checks for the very first time because job market was very strong. But you see a sudden spike upwards. So in the last week of March, about 280,000 people filing for unemployment insurance for the first time. These are new cases. And then you see some declines. So one positive trend on this is that, first, we don't want to see this, but at least the number of people who are filing for the very first time is beginning to diminish. So in recent weeks, it's far lower compared to before. But the total number of people receiving unemployment checks would be summation of all these figures. I know that some people have found jobs in Costco, Walmart, say FedEx. So there are some job creation, but the job losses are far outweighing the job creation. And one of the things that NAR had advocated for was the unemployment relief or pandemic relief during the business disruption to the home sales. So I hope realtors can tap into that resources temporarily because businesses activity is not normal, and therefore everyone who are working hard should be able to tap into this financial resources during this lockdown. Now, so unemployment number is very bad, but if one looks at the income situation, a different picture emerges. So because of the enhanced unemployment insurance benefit, where the federal government is adding $600 to the normal amount, if one looks at the state of Texas, for example, a person who lost their job today, being unemployed, is actually receiving more in unemployment check by $165 compared to the wage they were receiving, say working as a cashier in a Macy's department store. They got laid off. The unemployment check is actually higher than the wages they were receiving. So this implies that even though people do not have jobs, there is a sizable income replacement. In Wisconsin, people are worse off on average, short by $261 per week. In Massachusetts, it's fairly neutral, meaning that person who is being laid off on average, the unemployment insurance check is pretty much making up for those lost income. So we know the unemployment is a very difficult situation, but at least temporarily, they are getting some income support. And in the cases of Massachusetts, on average, full income replacement on average. Let me turn to two cities that is not Boston. Current pandemic is unprecedented. There's nothing to compare with, but if there is any slight similarities, I would say let's look at Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. So when the flooding occurred, unemployment rate shot up from 5% to 15% overnight. Then once the flooding receded, and also thanks to that massive disaster relief fund, unemployment rate was able to go down to 4% very quickly, implying that any disaster, maybe there could be a quick resolution to it. New York City, 9/11, that horrific terrorist attack events. So prior to the September 11th, unemployment rate in New York City was 4%. Then after the attacks, it went up to 7%. But note that it took some years before unemployment rate began to go down again, because in the New York City area, it was more related to fear, not flood. Flood, you just wait for it to recede, but the fear can linger. You eat at a restaurant, and given the recent memory, maybe people are afraid of another bomb attack. So the fear factor had held back the recovery speed in the New York City market. The second growth in unemployment rate, that is not the disaster event, but more subprime loan blowing up, the Lehman Brothers going bankrupt, foreclosures, all that mess. And now you see that after 10 years, unemployment rate had gone down back to very low levels in New York City right before the pandemic. Federal Reserve is all in to help out the economy. So people who are unemployed, they are getting unemployment checks. But the Federal Reserve is trying to do additional help, trying to stimulate the economy using all weapons, including something called quantitative easing. The essence of the quantitative easing for real estate practitioner is the following chart. Mortgage rates are at historic low levels. 3.3%, all-time low. It generally follows the orange line. Orange line is the 10-year Treasury yield. And if you look at the last data point, 10-year Treasury yields are under 1%, which means that mortgage rate could be under 3%, maybe 2.7%. So if you wait a couple of months, mortgage rate may actually be lower than what it is now. I know you are very happy with the low interest rate today, but it could be even lower in a couple of months. Possibility, not a guarantee because of this relationship. But I also want to say that right now the refi demand is very strong. Mortgage lender, they don't have staffing to work on the purchase application, and that's why maybe they are elevating the mortgage rate a little higher than what it could be. Also, the jumbo mortgages are currently not working. I know this is very important in Boston market because some of the homes are in the $1 million, $2 million price points, and the jumbo loans are not working because only the mortgages that can be sold to Fannie and Freddie, the mortgage originators feel very comfortable. If they cannot sell it to Fannie and Freddie, they prefer not originating it unless it is 20% down payment and very high credit score. So the upper end market could be soft for these reasons where it is very difficult to obtain the jumbo mortgages. The inventory level, I know all of you who practiced real estate in 2019, that was number one complaint. You want more inventory because you had clients. The labeling on the chart, by the way, the dollar signs should be removed. I don't know why it's there, but these are units, the units across the US crops. So the inventory level had been low before the pandemic, and now it is even lower. So for those buyers, and who are those buyers? Well, even with high unemployment, 70% of Americans would consider to have a secure employment. So those people with secure job, they are facing historically low mortgage rates. They just want more inventory choices before deciding. And given this situation, I do not expect home prices to decline in the Boston area, especially on the mid-price and lower points. And don't be surprised if you continue to see multiple bid offers on those starter homes, affordable homes, because the people with secure employment, I mean, they are eager to get into the market. Another point on this chart is to show you that we are unlike 2007, 2008 with oversupply. Home builders have not been building sufficiently, so there is no chance of an oversupply situation, and we don't have subprime lending with excess demand, and therefore we are in much solid foundation to keep home prices stable, if not an increase, even during the pandemic period. The first evidence of the pandemic impact is the month of March. So we saw pending contracts nationwide decline 20%. We are beginning to tally up the April figures, and April figures to be even lower, possibly 30 or 40% lower compared to 1 year before. But I think the April would be the absolute bottom in terms of pending contracts. So there is a little lag time after pending contract to closings. So the actual closing and the cutting of the commission checks, the low point could be in June or July. But so again, during this disruption, please tap into that financial resources, the unemployment pandemic relief in the interim. I know realtors don't even like the word unemployment checks, but this is a government-imposed lockdown, and tap into the resources that are available. And I say the worst could be already over. Again, April could be the low point in terms of pending contracts, but in the month of May, mortgage application to buy a home, it is lower compared to 1 year before, but down only 10% rather than 35% that was happening in April. So the trend line is certainly looking great. And with more inventory, surely it will reappear as economies steadily reopens, and I hope safely. Then I anticipate that this line could go to neutral, meaning almost same as 1 year ago in say 3 or 4 weeks time frame. Home building activity has been very below the historic normal of that horizontal line, multiple years, and there is no way to have a quick fix. During the pandemic, home builders have pulled back even further, which means that housing shortage will be with us even as the economy reopens. And housing shortage may persist in 2021. So if you have those mid-priced homes, affordable homes, you may see continuing price appreciation, even as the upper end market may see some slight price depreciation in the upper end market. Now, the question is the massive stimulus that we have put into place. How is the government getting the money? Well, the government is running up a large budget deficit. They're issuing a lot of debt. Who is buying US debt? Is it the Chinese government, German mutual fund, New York City Teachers Retirement Fund? Who is buying this debt? And currently, it is the Federal Reserve. Where is the Federal Reserve getting the money to buy US debt? They are printing money. So in short, the unemployment check that people are receiving, it was printed money from the Federal Reserve. So there's a lot of printing money. And you say, if we have a lot of printing of the money, does that mean that we will have higher inflation in the future? And answer is that US dollar has a special role. If you have a $20 bill, whether you are in Mexico, Indonesia, or in Finland, if you want to get a haircut, you should show that $20 bill and they will accept it and you will get a haircut. Because of the reserve currency status of the US dollar, we will not have inflation with printing of the money in the short term. So next year, this year, no inflation. But 5 or 6 years from now, there could be higher inflation. That means the rents will be rising, college tuition will be rising, food prices will be rising, maybe even the wages will be rising, but that does not mean standard of living is rising because everything is more expensive. But one thing that will not be rising is mortgage monthly payment. We have locked in those rates. So I would say it is a very opportune time for some buyers who are locking in those rates today or next year at low rates because their monthly payment will not be rising even if the inflation was to pop out 5 or 6 years from now. Let me go quickly into the forecast for the sake of time. So 2018, 2019, the home sales were very respectable. The actual figure of 5.3 million does not mean much for Boston realtors, but it's showing that it was very high levels. And the first quarter was actually better than that. First quarter being better, but second quarter would be absolutely awful, down about 39% in my estimate. Third quarter still below 1 year ago, but less of a decline. Of course, I'm going to be wrong on this forecast, but trying to give you just general feel for that second quarter would be the worst. Third and fourth quarter, hopefully only modestly down from 1 year before. And if this is the case, that means that in 2020, the middle column, the GDP for the year as a whole will be down. Job losses, even as the job recovery occurs in the second half, not all job losses that occurred initially will be replaced. So the overall net job loss. Home prices holding steady, home sales down about 10 to 15%, but in 2021, everything should be turning positive. My final thoughts are this: permanent change even after vaccine is discovered. I think the open houses, there will be some caution related to that. So even if pandemic is no longer an issue, we'll see what happened to open houses. But virtual office meeting, for example, what we are doing now, I think this will be very common, which means that more companies will permit remote working. Therefore, people do not have to live close to Boston anymore. They can move further out, knowing that they do not have to go to office every single day. And out in the suburb, maybe they want a larger house with a dedicated office spaces. So we may have a resurgence of different kind of housing demand in the upcoming years as people are saying, well, if I'm going to work remote more often, then might as well live further out in a larger size home. So those are my thoughts. Thank you for listening, and thank you for having me in this session.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Yun, for joining us today. I know you are on a tight schedule and you've brought Dr. Jessica Lautz to help us with some forecast questions. So for all the attendees, please, we do have another half hour. Any final thoughts for us? We don't have any questions for you in this compressed time frame.
Sometimes, one has to assess all the market condition, but I think the one thing that realtors should communicate with their clients is with so much printing of the money, those are factual information. Another factual information is that we have a housing shortage, not a surplus of inventory as occurred 10 years ago. So the home price decline is a different story. Another factual difference, subprime lending prevalence 10 years ago, no subprime lending this time around. So there are many uncertainty, like the path of the virus, vaccine discovery, when that will happen, so a lot of unknowns, but also there are facts. And I think from realtors, as you communicate with your clients, talk about those factual information of housing shortage, printing of the money, historically low mortgage rate, at least for the interim. So I think those would be something for the consumers to take into as they decide.
Awesome, thank you. So I think if the question we're always getting is it a good time to buy or sell for our buyers or sellers out there? What's the answer?
Answer is, first, we need more listings. So anyone who has been holding back in listing, I would say there's plenty of buyers out there. And second, most of the listing, I would say 70 or 80% of the listings are for the purpose of buying the next home. So it's not only selling, but it's also automatically creating demand. But for anyone who have, again, secure employment, I would say it is a good opportune time to get into the market. The inventory choices are limited, that's bad news, but it is certainly good to have real estate knowing that there could be inflation in the future years.
That's great. And thank you so much for joining us today and giving us a half hour. I know how demand your time is because you're our best chance at a crystal ball right now. So I always appreciate hearing from you, and I know our members do as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jason, for having me. Thank you.
All right. So before we move on to Dr. Lautz, who's going to give us a little more information about the next 6 to 18 months and what we might be expecting there, I want to introduce Nancy Mombaquette. Nancy is the New England Regional Manager for Citizens Bank, and she served on the GBAR affiliate committee, industry affiliates committee for the past few years. She's a familiar face for many of us who see her at a lot of our network events. Thank you for joining us at all of those and joining us today. And thank you for sponsoring us and this event today. And I think it's really important, Nancy, your support allows us to bring this type of information, these educational events that we host, as well as the networking opportunities. So thank you so much for your support. And please take a few minutes to introduce yourselves to those who haven't met you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jason. Really appreciate being a part of your event today. And I don't know about you guys, but I feel super energized after listening to Dr. Yun talk about the economy and what's ahead of us in the near future. So it's great to hear some positive things that are going to come from this. It's nice to see that, real estate's going to be back in somewhat of a form of the business on June 1st. So I'm looking forward to seeing everybody out there and about as soon as it's safe and possible to be out there. I did want to mention just one thing. I know he talked about mortgage rates being low and possibly going lower. I'm in agreement with that. I think that's going to happen too, and I'm super excited about that. But I will tell you this, Citizens Bank is one of the few banks out there that is continuing to lend in the portfolio with less than 20% down. So we're currently doing jumbo loans, both on condos and single family homes, with in some cases as little as 5% down, but we'll do 10% down up to $1.5 million. So it's great to see that we're one of the local lenders out there supporting the real estate community. And just want to thank everybody for your support, over the years. And currently, we're happy to be a part of your association. Thank you, Jason.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nancy. On a personal note, Nancy just helped out my family with a refinance, and it went very well thanks to her help. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Lautz, Vice President of Demographics and Behavioral Insights at National Association of Realtors, is joining us. She's actually presented at a GBAR broker owner forum in the past. Thank you for doing that. And she's going to be discussing changing housing needs of buyers as we see the data from NAR COVID-19 flash survey come in, as well as some future demographic and housing market trends that may occur as a result of the pandemic. And of course, key findings from NAR's latest profile of home buyers and sellers. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. And just, oh, there we are, showing my screen. Perfect. That is seamless. Thank you so much for having me, Jason. I'm excited to be here. So we are doing this weekly flash survey, and it's been pretty fascinating to see the results coming in and how it's changed over the last 10 weeks. And it has changed. In the first iterations, we were asking and we were doing oversamples in California and in Washington state. That's where we were hearing all the news reports. By the time we actually started releasing the report the week of, we realized that we really should have been oversampling places like New York, New Jersey, Boston. So we knew that conditions were changing on such a rapid basis. With this survey, what we have been able to do, and what has been really amazing to be able to do, is to watch how quickly the real estate market has pivoted. We always knew that members were using technology, that they were using these tech tools to be able to actually have their real estate transactions and move forward, but we didn't understand how quickly our members were going to be using them on a daily basis for virtual listings, virtual showings, even virtual open houses in some areas, and how they were going to be changing up the real estate market by doing that. What we have found in this weekly flash survey is that, yes, we are seeing that some buyers and sellers are taking a temporary pause in buying and selling activity. What I will say, though, is that the information that we're getting back suggests that we have already seen the bottom of this and that there is less of a pause going on, that people are actually saying, you know what, now I am comfortable with social distancing rules. I'm comfortable embracing this technology through my transaction, and I actually do need to make this trade. I need to buy a new property. I can't live here for the foreseeable future, especially if I'm going to quarantine in place, perhaps even a second time. This is not the place where I need to be living. So we're seeing that there's actually some members who are saying they're seeing an increase in buyer activity right now, and that people are coming back from this pause. The really good thing, and the thing that I saw consistently through the last 10 weeks in this data, is that even if people are saying they're taking a temporary pause, they do actually think it's temporary. So less than 10% are actually saying this is a permanent stop in my transaction. Some of that could be from a health and welfare perspective, but some of it could be also from an economic perspective. Perhaps they lost their job and were not just furloughed and don't expect to be hired back. But that, again, is a very small share of that transaction. And what Lawrence alluded to, too, when he was talking, is that the positions that have been lost, unfortunately, for these Americans, very unfortunate, but they typically are at a younger age bracket than what you would see for that home buyer who's typically coming in, even for their first home. So we are seeing a bit of an age difference there for the jobs that have been lost temporarily in the economy. What we do know is that if buyers are in the market right now, they have put a fast forward button on their transaction. So what we have seen historically when we look at the data is that people see about 12 homes. They take their time, if they can, going through and seeing home tours in their price point, perhaps even waiting for another home to come on the market into their price point. What we're seeing in the last year, so before COVID-19, what we saw is that people actually looked at 9 homes before a contract. Some of that, I think, is due to the tightened inventory. They just didn't have enough homes that they would typically view. Right now, people are looking at 3 homes before they put a contract on. And I think that is a fast forward that we have not seen before. That is a very fast transaction. So that buyer knows, you know what, I have to make this transaction happen. I'm ready to go. Let's make it. Let's make this happen. The other change that we're seeing, which is fascinating, is this embrace of tech tools in a way where when we ask our members, have you worked with a buyer who put a contract on the home in the last week? And they say yes. We then ask, did they see that home in person or did they only see it virtually? A quarter of members are saying that they worked with a buyer who only saw that home virtually. We don't have an apples to apples comparison on this because it's not something that we've ever thought to ask before, but a quarter are saying this. the closest comparison that we have is the profile of home buyers and sellers. When we look at that data, what we actually see is that only 3.5% of members or of buyers sell their home or put a contract on sight unseen. So it's a very, very small share of buyers who typically do this. The other thing that we're seeing is that sellers very quickly change their behavior. I remember the first week that we did this survey, Lawrence and I were talking, and we're talking in the office across the desk from each other. And very quickly, we changed our behavior, and the survey also changed. What we saw is that, and this is a question that we keep changing up because we keep seeing new things that people are doing to protect themselves besides the gloves, besides the mask. Sellers are even saying, you know what? If people are only seeing my home virtually, the agent is saying, you know what's easier is if you have a home inspection report in hand so that you can show that buyer, this is what you're seeing virtually. This is all the bones behind all of the virtual tour. And we're not just virtually staging this. This is really what you are seeing here as well to make people feel reassured. Our research committee, who's been very active in this survey, has really helped us in understanding some of these changes and ways to fix the survey up. The other thing that we are understanding from the survey is that there's delays in the transaction, and I think that's to be expected right now, but they're in different stages in the transaction, and it varies depending on what your state and local laws are. So, of course, you could run into title issues, you could run into home inspection issues, or you could run into appraisal issues aside from closing or financing. So we are seeing that some of these are actual laws that we have to perhaps overcome in those areas, but some of those are issues through that transaction. But we know that that's a normal part of this right now, and I think if buyers and sellers go into the transaction knowing, you know, you could have a delay, knowing this with their eyes open, they at least are ready for that. So I think what becomes really interesting is we wanted to switch up in the last couple of weeks, and we know that buyers are coming back into the market, they're feeling more confident. Are they keeping their wants the same in that transaction? And what we actually found is that no, they are switching them up. So 13% of members said that buyers have changed at least one home feature that they want in their transaction. 5% are saying, hey, people want to get out of the city center and into these small towns and suburban areas. So perhaps, again, they can work remote now. Their workplace is going to be more flexible moving forward, and they can have more space outside of this dense city center. So I'm in Arlington, Virginia, right outside of DC. I'm in a townhouse community. My windows are closed right now, but there's like a 99% chance that you will hear children screaming outside because it is 3 o'clock. It is beautiful outside, and the parents are done trying to homeschool if they attempted that today. And I'm pretty sure the game is just scream as loud as you can. So it's a really, really dense place, but I understand that that's where a lot of Americans live. But I think that there could be this development to move away from this. The other thing that we are seeing is that we asked members, are you working with potential sellers right now? So that if they feel more confident to actually turn the go switch on, states start opening up, to actually just be ready to place that home on the market as soon as you can. And 50% of members are saying that yes, they are working with potential sellers right now. The number one thing they're doing is they're helping them DIY projects. People have time and they're at home, so they have that ability to start DIYing those projects. So whether that's just painting a room, or maybe that's fixing up something that they know is broken, that would detract a buyer in the future, they're taking on these types of projects. So I want to dive into this 13% a little more. We have a laundry list of things that we asked that people could be changing up these home features, and the number one, not surprising, was home office. And in fact, we just asked one home office, and in the other category, we actually had a lot of people write in 2 home offices. So I didn't realize that I guess I knew that you could have 2 home offices, but I certainly don't have 2 home offices. I had a guest room. We have 1 home office upstairs. There's 3 adults working in this house, me, my husband, and my little sister, all at different associations. We're all jockeying for that home office. So after I saw that other category, I went, oh my goodness, why don't we have 2 home offices? We're not going to have guests anytime soon. So right now against the wall, I have a bed propped up, and I bought a new desk, which is really hard to find because you can't find them anywhere because they're all sold out. So I think it's really fascinating how a lot of Americans are really embracing this, but it's also changing that home space a little bit. But one of the other things that we asked within that survey is, are you going to change the home features based on who's going to actually live in this home? And what we found is, yes, people are planning on changing who's living in their home as well. We're all in this Instapot situation where there's a lot of Americans who any relationship that they're in is essentially on the fast forward button as well. They're spending more time with the people who are in their home, but they're spending time away from people too that they want to be with. And so what we did find is that last year, 1 in 6 Gen Xers and younger boomers purchased a multi-generational home. When we look at these buyers today who are looking at homes, what we find is that they plan on having an older adult relative move in with them. This is a very interesting trend and something that I think could very much evolve as we look at these home buyers. What we have seen is the share of multi-generational buyers has actually increased in recent years, and 1/4 of minority home buyers are actually purchasing these multi-generational homes. So I think this is this fascinating time in America where people are really missing their family. They want to be near them. They can't actually physically see them if they're in a senior center in many places. And so they're actually saying, I want to take this adult into my home now. If we do see this, I think that we're going to absolutely have this goes hand in hand with this demand for this larger home, a single family home, and a place that perhaps is outside of the city center to accommodate everyone who lives there. For people already who are purchasing multi-generational homes, many of them are doing this for cost saving. Because you can purchase this larger home, you can pool your resources for utilities, for groceries, for even older adult care and for child care. So I think that we could see this continuation of this trend coming out of this crisis. The other thing that we have seen in the data already is that people are expecting that there's going to be a baby boom. And a lot of countries that have come before us with this, in this Instapot situation, have had a baby boom. So when we look at this, what we see is that the trend for the last about 40 years, 35 years now, is that we have a drop in birth rates. And so recent home buyers who did purchase a home, what we see is that the share of buyers who purchased a home who have a kid under the age of 18 has decreased rapidly. And this just mirrors the drop in birth rates in the country. So it'll be very, very interesting if we see this uptick in people who do have children under the age of 18 in their home. This is a big driver for home ownership. One of the caveats I'm going to say about this is that why we have this drop in birth rates in the US is actually really driven by finances. People don't have the cash flow and finances to have a child come into their life or even a second child to come into their life. So unfortunately, I don't know if we're going to see this connection and this baby boom increase. You could see people throw caution to the wind, and you could see them say, you know, this is an opportune time for me to have a child because I do have the time right now and I am at home. Or you could say there's contraction of this and this fear that I don't know about my job situation or I am currently furloughed, and so I don't know if I feel comfortable with this. Either one of those things I think is a toss-up right now. The other thing that we're seeing is that there is absolute clearing of the shelters around the country. There's been a lot of news reports that there is no dogs or cats to adopt or foster. And so I think that this is an interesting one. We actually did a report on this. It was our second iteration. It's called Animal House. And what we wanted to see is that, is this a driver for where people actually purchase homes? Are they purchasing homes because of their pets? And is it a driver for what they want in their home? So every single one of those animals you see on that screen, all 5 of them, 4 cats and 1 dog, there's a cat sleeping across from me right now, do live in this house. So there's a black kitten in here and I don't know which one. This is a driver for our family. It's absolutely a driver for a lot of other families, because you see actually for unmarried couples and for single females who are purchasing homes, and those are really large shares, that they actually say, my pet is more important than a school, than the school district that I am living in, because it doesn't matter to me because I don't have a kid. So this becomes a really interesting proposition, especially if we look in rural and urban areas where these start to matter more to these adults. So this is a very interesting proposition. The other thing is that we could see an end of solo buying. So we have already, and this is a really interesting chart. So for first-time home buyers, you've seen marriage rates across the country drop, and this is especially pronounced for younger adults. And as you see this drop in marriage rates, you see a drop in married couples who are purchasing their first home together. What you see a rise in, though, is a rise in unmarried couples purchasing homes together, perhaps pooling incomes as housing affordability has become especially difficult. And you see a rise in roommates who are purchasing homes together. So not romantically attached, they strictly are roommates. We have seen a drop in single female buyers in recent years. And I think this is largely due to affordability rather than the desire for the single female to purchase a home. What we could see, though, is that people may reevaluate living by themselves, or you could see that people want to live by themselves. So either one of these things, I think, could be an impact and a result of the crisis that we're currently in. The other thing that I think is something that really could impact people is for first-time home buyers. They have been under the historical norm of 40% coming out of the Great Recession, and we are still vastly under this number. This first-time home buyer share has been lagging, and I think it could be very difficult for first-time home buyers to enter the housing market, especially when we see even tighter housing inventory right now than we have seen even in the past year. So this could be very hard for these first-time home buyers to enter, especially as some lenders say, no, you need 20% down, no, you need a credit score above 720. This could be hard for these buyers, and especially because first-time home buyers typically only have a down payment of 6% in the last year, and historically it's never been even a median of 10% for first-time home buyers. So this could be very hard for them to enter. We did another report called Down Payment Expectations, actually looking at what do people think the typical down payment is, where are they receiving their down payment, where do they expect to receive their down payment, and we did find that 1/3 of first-time home buyers are relying on the bank of mom and dad for their down payment. Most potential first-time home buyers are very confused on what they need to actually purchase a home today, and really do think that they need a higher down payment. I think there are potential opportunities in this market right now, and one of those is that tenure has been elevated, and we're at an all-time high of 10 years that people have owned their homes. And I think that this could be that time where people really decide, I can't be in my home anymore after I've been here 24/7. This is really the time for me to move. The other thing, which I think is a toss-up right now, is student debt. So we have seen that one of the first measures that the federal government took was actually putting federal student loans automatically into forbearance and also bringing them down to a 0 interest rate. So what that means for student loans is that essentially it's like a 0 interest credit card. A lot of people were in a negative AM student loan situations. They owed more on their debt even after making on-time payments the next quarter than they did this quarter. So they really could be able to tackle that debt and pay it down very quickly. The bad thing, or not necessarily a bad thing, because if you have lost your job, you absolutely should take advantage of this, is that if someone is not aware of it, they just had an auto debit out of their account for their student debt, is that they automatically put student loans into automatic forbearance for federal student loans, meaning they don't have to make a payment until October, and that the borrower may not be even aware of that. So I think that this is one of the things that really could be talked about to these potential buyers, or even someone who wants to move up to a new home but can't because of this debt. This could be an interesting opportunity to be able to talk to these individuals. And the reason why I bring this up is that this is typically the biggest hurdle for a first-time home buyer, or even a repeat buyer who does want to move out of their entry-level home into their next home, into homeownership. The part that I want to end on here is that there's been a lot of questions recently about, well, these big tech companies coming in, and are they going to really take over real estate? The one thing that I'm hearing over and over again is that buyers really want to use an agent, and even more so now, they really want that representation on their side. And we have seen a historic highs in people using buyer's agent, 89% of buyers using a buyer's agent. They want that representation. They don't know about this process. It's even more confusing now using these tech tools. And they absolutely want someone that they can actually ask questions to, as opposed to feeling this disconnect. I would also say that the buyers who are out there today, they are moving urgently from the data that I'm seeing. They're working in a situation where there's very few listings. They very possibly could be in a situation where they're in a divorce situation, have a new baby, and perhaps are saying, no, I need to move right now. This is not something where I can wait. And so having an agent who can work with them, I think is so important in that time period. The other thing that we're seeing is that on the sales side, very similarly, 89% of people sold with an agent last year. People don't feel comfortable using FSBOs, and this time period, they didn't feel comfortable going into this. And so I really don't think that we're going to be seeing that right now. And one of the questions that we have asked in this recent flash survey is just the rate of members who are really committed to their communities. And I think this is such a happy note to end on, because we are really seeing that people, our members, are investing in their communities. They're donating their time, they're volunteering, they're donating actual food and to food banks, to frontline workers, to elder care. And I just think it's just a special thing that our members are so invested in their communities and are doing this at such high rates. The last plug I'm going to give is for Right Tools Right Now. It's a program that we have at NAR. You can get free resources, free classes, free publications. All of this is all online. So please do check it out, Right Tools Right Now, and they actually even have e-telemed. So you can take advantage of that as well. And follow us on social media. So that's all I have for prepared remarks, but I believe there's a couple minutes left for questions.
That's fantastic. And I think it's so interesting to see that the use of agents is actually on the rise, especially in the buyer agent market. That's really encouraging. I think people are putting more value in who we are. So any takeaways you might want to share with us as far as where we might want to be talking to our buyers about consideration or our sellers about improvements prior to listing?
Yeah, so we actually have this whole series of reports called Remodeling Impact, and you can actually go through them with your actual potential seller. One, I think I put your seller on a FaceTime or something like that so they can walk around the house. Ask them where their sore points are. Ask them what they hate about their house. Things that the buyer is absolutely going to see as soon as they walk in. One of the easiest ones probably to tackle, but also is cheap, is curb appeal. People really want a healthy lawn. They want beautiful flowers when they step in. They want to see it in a photo. They want to feel welcomed. Those are actually really low dollar value projects. So a few $100 just investing in that. And it has a return of something like 300%. It's crazy. So you get the money back if you put the money in the elbow grease in, and you get fresh air right now, which I think we all need a little bit of.
A little sweat equity goes a long way if you're doing it yourself. So that's great. Well, Dr. Lautz, thank you so much for joining us today. I know this has been riveting for me. It tells me so much about how to move my business forward. I'm sure our members will agree. You always bring a lot of great content. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So that was some great information from NAR. And now we get to have our esteemed association executive, John Dolczewski, join us and give us a quick update on what's going on in our region in terms of Greater Boston Association. How are you doing, John?
I'm very well, Jason. Thanks. Good to see you. Good to see you, Dr. Lautz, and certainly we appreciate your time and that of Dr. Yoon. I'll just put in a plug for all the great information and research. You got a taste of it today from NAR, but they have so much more. Jessica referenced a few of those reports, but if you go to nar.realtor, research and statistics, and each word research and statistics is set off by a hyphen, you'll get to all that data, and it's also at the top of the homepage there for easy access. So I do encourage members to check it out. I also want to put in a plug just for the web information we have. We've created a coronavirus page. Our state chapter, MAR, has one as well at marcovid19.com, and of course NAR has it. So there's tremendous resources and materials available. The most recent that members should be aware of that's up on our site and at MAR is the new comprehensive plan for reopening announced by Massachusetts Governor Baker and his administration yesterday. So there are now posters, there are mandatory safety standards and specific guidance that all of our brokerage offices should be following in order to reopen up. Obviously, you've had the opportunity for some time now to keep your bricks and mortar offices open. I think everybody's doing that sparingly, but as you look to have your sales associates and employees re-enter the workspace, there are specific guidelines and protocols you're going to have in place in order to meet that, and that includes a COVID-19 plan as well, a control plan, and the template for that is up on our website as well. So encourage all the members to take advantage of that as you put your plans in place. I also want to make reference to the fact that this webinar series continues next week. So we're continuing them for the time being on Tuesdays at 2:30, but we also have a webinar we're particularly excited about next Wednesday with a local security expert by the name of Robert Siciliano. Some of you may have seen him on CNN or other broadcast outlets, but he's a national expert on protecting your data, data privacy, and avoiding against scams, data breaches, and malware and spyware, and the damage that can do to you, not only us individually, but on a business basis as well. So May 27th from 10 to 11:30 a.m. Information is out online at our website, and we've sent some email communications, but encourage you to take a look at that particular program. And then I've been talking about this for a few weeks now, but we are days away from announcing officially our member benefit with iSpy 360, a virtual tool creator. So members should be watching for that email as well, with information on how to take advantage of all that's available from them, which includes floor plans, Bellhouse 3D models, and even a live viewing, a 360 live, where you can take your clients through property online. So all that's going to be available for just $18.99 a month, plus tax, and a small $10 fee for each tour created. So again, we're just waiting to put the ink on the agreement for that, and then the information will be out to members. So that's what I have to share today, Jason.
Awesome, a lot of exciting stuff there. I hope everyone else has enjoyed this edition of GBAR Live as much as I have. Thank you all for joining us today. As we start to open the economy and we move through the 4 phases of the Massachusetts reopening plan, I just want to encourage everyone to remember to be safe. Remember the opportunity to safer at home, and balance your work-life schedule. Just remember, just because you don't have the chance to leave the office every day, don't bring the office to your personal time. Find that balance, enjoy the day as we move into nicer weather. And be safe, everyone. Thank you for joining us this week.